we need to get our HbA1c equivalent, because without it, you can't manage it if you can't measure it. So that's what we wanted. We wanted to be able to look at that data on the movement side and be able to help reduce injuries to some degree. And God, what is it? It's like 750 million like lost work days because of back problems. There's this extraordinary numbers.
Are you a scaling SaaS founder? Ready to make the leap from leading a team to leading an organization? Join us each week as we refill your think tank with actionable tips and strategies from great business minds you know and those who don't know yet. This is SaaS Fuel with your host, 5-time entrepreneur, SaaS founder, and globetrotting adventurer, Jeff Maines.
Welcome back to the SaaS Fuel podcast, where New Year's resolutions are just annual proof that hope is stronger than memory. Because we all swore last year we'd never try kale smoothies again, yet here we are. I'm your host, Jeff Maines. I help B2B SaaS founders like you grow from traction to scale. Here, growth is more than just numbers. It's about crafting a future-proof company, premium valuation, and leaders who build a business of significance while living epic, adventurous lives. Happy Quitters Day, everybody. Yeah, that's right. Last Friday marked the infamous second Friday of January. And that's the day, statistically, when most New Year's resolutions quietly fizzle out. Could be fitness goals, career goals, business goals. And, by now, a couple weeks in, the excitement of new year, new me has faded and the grind is set back in. But here's the cool thing: Quitter's Day doesn't have to be your story. And I'll bet you it's not, because you're still here. And if you're here and you're still striving and still engaged in the battle for revenue and growth, you're already beating the odds. That's pretty awesome. And hey, even if you stumbled a bit, well, today's episode is exactly what you need to get back on track. Today, we're talking about the power of measurement, whether it's tracking movement and flexibility for better health or charting progress toward business goals. Because what you measure, you can manage, and what you manage, you can change. But what if the secret to lasting improvement isn't about setting bigger goals, but committing to consistent, measurable actions? We'll explore how regular tracking impacts both our bodies and our businesses, and we'll uncover some strategies for creating change that actually sticks, personally and in our companies. So let's ditch the Quitter's Day mindset and ask ourselves, what small step can we measure today to set us up for a stronger tomorrow? Let's dive in. Our expert guest last week was Ken London. He is the mastermind behind RevHeat sales methodology. It's helped companies scale from millions to hundreds of millions with precision and strategy. Decades of deep experience and understanding in strategic selling, Ken empowered CEOs and technology leaders to overcome challenges of leading high performing sales teams. So if you missed any of that episode, go back and give it a listen. It is a great way to start thinking about sales differently in 2025. And our founder last Tuesday was Peter Loving. Absolutely amazing. He shared the blueprint for designing SaaS products that captivate users and drive exponential growth. From harnessing AI to revolutionizing product design to implementing user centered strategies that boost retention and revenue. Very, very cool stuff. That episode is brimming with transformative insights. So if you missed either of those, go back and get caught up. It's good stuff. My guest today is Andrew Menter, founder of Physmodo. He is a tech entrepreneur who brings the grit of a Division I athlete, the resilience of an Ironman competitor, and the innovation of a startup founder. Wow, that is quite a combination. Drawing from a journey of high-level sports, startup lessons, and game-changing tech, Physmodo has redefined movement screening to reduce injuries and optimize performance across industries like fitness, youth sports, and even the military. This is the SaaS founder who is using cutting edge movement technology to revolutionize injury prevention and performance enhancement. Welcome, Andrew Menter. Hey, Andrew, welcome to SaaS Fuel.
Oh, thanks for having me, Jeff.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your journey. Division I athlete, Ironman finisher, to tech founder, and now Physmodo. How did that shape your perspective on solving physical health challenges?
Yeah, so going backwards, what we do at Physmodo is we try to measure how you move, and we do it really quickly. We want the high throughput, whether it's getting a bunch of people in a company any organization, a gym, to be able to get as many people through as possible. And then when you are screening, we want you screening as frequently as possible. So going back to why this is important for me and where I saw an opportunity is based on my experience. So, even starting in high school playing tennis at, at a competitive level, and then so I played as D1 at Brown, and people are like, "Oh man, you're super smart." And I'm like, I don't think I would have gotten into Brown without my tennis. Let's be honest. And I'm not stupid, but I'm not that smart. But yeah, got in there. And tennis, I was okay playing on clay courts, but playing on the hard court just beats up your body. And I was injured a fair amount there. Um, After college, I made the natural transition to rugby, and
Of course.
uh, yeah, I mean, you know, learn from your previous no, and I was born in South Africa and lived there for 8 years, so that's our big sport. Shout out to
Sure.
the Springboks, number one in the world. And uh, interestingly, I got injured the least amount in rugby. Grass surfaces, you don't have a helmet like football where you're smashing people and using your head as a weapon, because that would hurt without a helmet. Um, the only injuries there were really just broken nose a few times. And but then going from there into triathlon, uh, that's really, really difficult on the body.
Yes.
The swim was nice, but the bike is tough. I mean, being in that position for at the Ironman level, 112 miles is tough on the back. So, I mean, you really need to have good hip mobility, core strength, and so forth, which is what we're measuring. So that could portend a back injury. And then running is just, tough on the knees.
Right.
Um, then moving from Ironman to CrossFit for 7 years, there is no theme with any of these sports, but um, the injuries piled on there. So uh, I ruptured my Achilles. I have a slap tear, left shoulder, rotator cuff tear, ruptured bicep tendon, um, torn meniscus. And the interesting part, I think, is that they're all on the left side.
Hmm.
And
Interesting.
so, yeah, I'm very asymmetric. And the number one cause of injury is previous injury, but the number two is asymmetry. So that's one thing we're measuring in our screen. So uh, yeah, it's um, you can't manage movement if you don't measure it. And so I just wanted to be in a position where I can track my movement, and you know anybody can do that. Kind of trying to democratize it by making it so simple and in less than 30 seconds.
That's great. And it's something that we probably don't do that often. One, maybe if we're in physical therapy, somebody takes a look at us or we do some, a scan or some sort of a screen at the beginning. And then maybe, 3 months in, kind of, injury recovery, those kinds of things. But it's not something that's ongoing. And, I think just from my perspective, it hasn't been real scientific. It's kind of just, eyeballing it. And, I think we'll do these exercises today. We'll try this and, that kind of thing. It's, a lot more art than science, maybe.
Um, Historically, yes. I mean, first of all, I think that there's not a misunderstanding that movement's um, important. I think people, whether it's from the chiropractor, physical therapist, personal trainer, coach, I think they understand that. The challenge has been in a 30-minute doctor appointment or an hour personal training session. Are you gonna? How much time do you really want to spend on tracking somebody's movement? And the screens that started out didn't have any technology. It was like, hey, I mean, great screen is the functional movement screen, still very, very solid today.
Yes.
It's just different. And all credit to those guys for making movement kind of households, the right household name. People started caring about movement because now you could measure it. But it's a series of 7 movements, and it is subjective, where somebody gives a score, 0, you're injured, 3, you're moving perfectly, and then the 1 and the 2 is a little subjective. So it takes a fair amount of time. You cannot self-assess. And I think the subjectivity is tough, because if both of us are giving somebody a screen, and you give somebody a 1 and I give them a 2, and everything else on the other 6 is the same, we're still 5% off.
Hmm.
So it's time and objectivity that we're looking for. Um, if you're really good, you can get that screen done in 10 or 15 minutes. You're not going to do that if you have 30 minutes with a patient, or
Right.
even 50 minutes or an hour, or whatever it may be, with a client. So fast forward, and where the technology, starting with the Microsoft Connect 3D camera that's in the Xbox, is able to track your joints, and all of a sudden now we could move to something more objective. And there's a lot of awesome assessments out there. A lot of them or they're frankly doing a lot more than we are. But then you get to this time issue. We got to get people through quickly. We got to be able to onboard. We've got to be able to do quickly, and we got to be able to have people doing movements repeatedly. Because, for instance, so I have a wearable here, and I wake up, and I get my HRV, and I get my sleep. Let's just take an easy one. I get my sleep data, right?
Right.
So my sleep has a lot of variables. Did I work out that day? Do I have stress going on in my life? Whatever it may be. Now imagine if I just measured my sleep once every few months. That data is
Right.
irrelevant. It's
It is.
irrelevant. You need to get the the daily sleep data, so you get a baseline. You kind of know where you are. So then the data you get is useful. I feel the same way about movement. There's multiple variables, including your sleep, your workout the day before, were you on a
Right.
plane for 6 hours the day before? So we need to get a lot of screens done to get to your baseline. And that's what we're accomplishing by doing a very quick screen. And also having it not just the enterprise version at a physical location, but also on your app. So it anyone can do it. Or anyone that has a smart device, which I think is most of us.
Yeah. I think the timing is really interesting. Just over the last few years, we've definitely become much more, I think, digitally conscious of health, and that a lot of us do have wearables now, and it's something that it just wasn't around 5 or 10 years ago for sure. But certainly the last few years, it's become much more common, and we're paying attention to that more. So I think that this is really interesting, and just the convergence of health and technology, whether it is a bike or a mirror, or lots of different things that are available now, and an app like this, I think is just fascinating and really really good timing for the marketplace. Is that, was that something that you saw a need in the market to build it, or was it something that you see a problem to solve and you're like, hey, we can use technology to do that?
So I we're getting great data from wearables. We're getting a lot of good physiology, biometric data. And why is that important? Well, if you know something, you can do something about it, right?
Right.
So you talk about health. Well, let's look at the numbers. And these are a little old, but I think, roughly the same probably right now. But it was the percentage of Americans reporting the following medical conditions, and 31% were circulatory related, 28% were respiratory related, 13% was diabetic related. Now this is 10 years old. I think that number's way higher.
Probably.
And then there was actually 9% that's cancer related. So, for instance, if there's 13, well, let's call it at least probably doubled, whether diabetic, pre-diabetic, whatever. Well, it's nice. Well, you can measure your HbA1c levels. That's, the average
Right.
of sugar over your last, whatever, 60, 90 days. Okay, that's good data. We can do something with that. All of the labs that you get, you can do something with it. But I gave you all those percentages. Musculoskeletal is 54%.
Wow.
So
That's a big
what
deal.
we need to get our HbA1c equivalent, because without it, again, you can't manage it if you can't measure it. So that's what we wanted. We wanted to be able to look at that data on the movement side and be able to, help reduce injuries to some degree. And God, what is it? It's like 750 million like lost work days because of back problems. There's this extraordinary numbers. And okay, so for your back, is there something, if you have back pain, is there something structurally wrong with your back? Maybe, but if your hip mobility is bad, if your hamstring flexibility is bad, or if your core strength is bad, right? If you're not using that, your back's going to compensate for doing work it should not have to do. So you may not have a bad back now, just like you may not be diabetic now. You may be pre-diabetic, which we can see with those tests. You may not have a bad back, but you have bad hip mobility. You're probably going to get a bad back at some point. So
Hmm.
let's work on your hip mobility, or any of those, or those other two, based on the data, and we can try and get that 54% number a lot lower. And that's on the health side. And then just on, lifestyle,
Right.
just being able to just, go to the gym, pick up your kids, carry the groceries, stuff like that. It's, you know, train the way you want to train. So that's really what we're trying to address. And unlike a wearable where you can wake up and just get all this data, you can't just wake up and do it. So, and figure out how your movement is. So how do we make this as simple as possible? And that's the 30-second screen. I think Americans' average attention, maybe this is global, attention span is like 14 seconds, but just double it and do your movement screen. See how you're moving, dude.
Yeah, that's really good, and I like the ability to use other data as well, and because it's is it cause, is it effect? Is it I worked out really hard yesterday, so I'm sore today. I'm not moving as well, or don't have as much flexibility in certain areas. But you can really start to draw correlations. I can do that with sleep. There are things that I've noticed that when my sleep score is bad, I can think about what I did the day before, the night before, or workout times, or scheduling or time changes, and start to make correlations with, hey, I probably shouldn't do this if I'm going to sleep well. And so we can do the same thing with movement of really understanding, what it is, one, what we have done, but also what we can do. So just like you said, with the hips, we know that hip mobility is low. Then we want to do something about that now so that it doesn't cause back issues later. So it's just kind of
Yeah.
that correlation.
And then on the recovery side, on the physical therapist or chiropractor or whatever it may be, just from personal experience, the worst injury I had was the torn Achilles. And Aaron Rodgers came back in four months to be quarterback of the Jets, but he's been terrible this year. But maybe that's a bad example. 4 months is quick. Um,
That's so
but
fast. Yeah.
yeah, well, he can't complete a pass, so maybe there's a correlation there.
Could be.
So yeah, but when I tore my Achilles, which is closer to a 9-month deal, I was able to. But pre injury, I had pretty good symmetry. But when I was able to do a squat to some degree, I was 20% asymmetric on that left side when I started. Now,
Wow.
granted, I had a ton of rehab to do, so um, I wanted to get back to my baseline before I jumped back in because I didn't want to get re-injured. So kind of when I got within, 3%, I'm like, all right, now I can probably ramp up a little bit. but I don't want to be, I might feel decent, but if I'm 10% off, I'm not ready. But again, you got to have the data. So,
Really
um,
helpful to know.
yeah. But and also, talking about some of this other data we'll get from wearables or lab tests or whatever it may be. But sticking on the wearable side, a lot of them say, all right, you wake up, here's all your scores, and we're using those scores and saying, giving your readiness for the day. So, you know, you're generally in these a 1 to 100, and it's like, okay, here's your readiness. And I got one where I had a 97, which is pretty good out of 100.
Yeah.
And that's because I slept really well, and my HR, and I wasn't stressed. I mean, and that's because I'd done a 3-hour hike the day before. Now, and my device said, "Hey, you're ready. You're 97. Today's a peak day. Go crush life." And um, but I have a torn meniscus, so because of that hike, I couldn't really walk very well. So I wasn't doing
Mm.
a damn thing that day. So um, w- ultimately, what we're trying to achieve here is more than just your movement. We're trying to understand your true readiness, because I typically score. I'm average. We're a 1 to 100. I'm about a 50. But that morning, when I was a 97 on my wearable, I was a 34 on our screen.
Okay.
So what is my readiness that day? It's not a 34 because there are other good things going on. I'm not certainly not a 97 because I'm just going to lay on the couch and wear my compression boots. So, like, you talk about correlations and data, that is ultimately where we're trying to get. I don't have the answer to that. We'll just have to look at the data and get smart people to figure it out.
I like that. Well, thinking about all the markets that are available to an app like this, I mean, you got fitness, military, chiropractors, any kind of work environment that's physical. I mean, how do you prioritize focus across segments? Is that something that you really have dialed in, or is that something that's still kind of a work in progress?
It's a work in progress, and partly that's because of the features that have evolved. Um, with our app, and also the fact that it's, when we started, we were using that Connect camera I mentioned with a Dell monitor,
Yep.
and in this kiosk going to look great, but it's pretty cumbersome, high barriers to entry with cost because the cogs were high, and that was B2B only. So, you can't get to the consumer. So yeah, you're pretty limited at that point with your markets. Now, with anybody just being able to do a screen, yeah, you can have, because it's just on an iPad or iPhone, and or whatever it may be, enterprise version, in a physical location on an iPad, or just your iPhone or Android device, or an iPad if you have it when you're remote. So, for instance, an example is we're working with a hospital that does a lot of athletic training, kind of as a in the community, whether it's high schools or travel clubs, and they have over 20,000 athletes they're working with.
Wow.
That wasn't a market before we got to this iteration of the software. So now that's orthopedic and youth sports. Um, on the military side, where we were working with special ops. Now, that iPhone wasn't possible because of the security issues. But that was super interesting because these are the biggest, fastest, strongest people, but the movement is, sometimes challenging. And if the stats in the Army, for instance, of the number of soldiers that are not deployable for non-combat related injuries, it's huge. It's 12%. It's
Hmm.
750,000.
Wow.
750,000. Now, some of that's, not musculoskeletal. There's some, there's other issues, but
Sure.
but three
Sure.
quarters of that is musculoskeletal. So
Wow.
that's, I don't love that market because the sales cycle is a little more challenging.
Sure.
Um, but I mean, we're in college sports. I think on the personal training side now, with it becoming more remote, that's great. And it's a great engagement tool with trainers and clients. On the chiropractic side, it's great there. So you're looking at, some prevention, um, and some tracking of recovery, and then on really just those, for instance, a personal trainer that wants to work with a client, it's an engagement tool. So
Yeah.
we really tackle several problems, and we're fortunate that the hardware is in a place that the software is compatible with going after multiple markets.
That's smart. It's almost gamifying fitness because every time you do it, every time you work out, every time you're training, you want to beat the last score, and you're always looking at your baseline and how am I improving, but you're tracking it over time. So it's almost gamifying the process. So they're
Well,
really invested in the outcome.
yeah. So when we went to URSA, the biggest fitness conference of the year, and we were very fortunate to have a partnership with TRX at the time, and we did in 2 days we did 1,000 screens, and
Wow.
that's an enormous number. But also, um, more telling, and kind of to your point, is on day two we had a lot of people come back because they wanted to
That's
see how they
great.
compared to day one, and they brought their friends back because they wanted to compete with their friends, or they did a screen, got on a foam roller, or used one of the TRX straps to do some of their movement stuff, and then rescreened 10 minutes later. So yeah, there is that. There's a lot more in the roadmap that uh, I think will make it more fun and encourage people to keep doing it. Those features I would name now, but we're a little behind because it's software, and
Of
that's
course.
that's what happens. Plus, I keep
That
changing the
always happens.
requirements with our dev guys, and they're like, "Dude, you can't do that. You can't give me a spec, have us work on it, and like 6 weeks into our 8 week process, say, I want this feature." You can, but don't expect me to finish it on time. Anyway, we have some great gamification stuff that we're excited to get out there.
That's great. And find a founder, any kind of tech founder on the planet that hasn't done that to their dev team at some point. They
Yeah.
just they don't
Well,
do this. We all do it.
I don't even have a dev background, so I don't understand the complexity of what they do. So
It's just typing.
it's just 2 digits, right? How hard can that be?
That's right. How hard could it be?
Yeah. Well, I've learned my lesson on that, so I
I have to.
try to
I
stay
have
quiet.
to.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Well, there are a lot of competing fitness apps out there, and yeah, have you developed like pricing strategy? Or I know last time we talked, you don't want to get into a race to the bottom in fitness technology. How do you strike that balance between value and then competitive in the marketplace, really standing out?
Yeah, the last time we chatted, I told you about your business, and you were going to answer that question for me. I don't. Uh, Based on your question, I guess you don't have that answer for me. Uh, that's your expertise, not mine. It's pricing. I think is the toughest
Sure.
piece of it. And so on our B2B side, enterprise license. Uh, the way I've thought about it is is different than originally, because the the constituents have always been, just take a gym, is the organization, and then the members. When we
Yep.
didn't have it on the mobile device, the people that were going to pay for it was the organization. Now there's the opportunity for um, an end user, the client, to pay for the app, and it's pretty inexpensive. So we have it at a price on the app side that's less than a personal training session for the year.
That's
And
great.
so I just want to do two things here. The way I'm thinking of it is, okay, enterprise might be a little too much, a little too pricey for the organization. So let's lower barrier to entries and see if we can monetize that in a different way. And then if you look at, what are the numbers? 35,000 gyms, uh, and 71 million members of a gym. So
Wow.
yeah, and and then it's whatever, depending on where you look, 300,000 personal trainers. So you want to tackle the 35,000. That's a tough road, because it's smaller and longer sales cycle. A lot of people say are barriers to entry on that, and we don't charge much. It's $349 a month, um, but still, that's a lot for others. So we
Sure.
our goal is to make that value to the member uh, as large as possible. Now the numbers are 71 million gym members, and about 10% or so do personal training. So there's a market of 7 million right there,
Yeah.
that all do personal training. So we come in at a price that's less than one session, um, and go after that. So that's the way we're thinking about it, is monetizing really on the app side, consumer app side, and enterprise. Um, I think the revenue from that will allow us to kind of go in at a price that's not as big a barrier to entry on the enterprise. And they all work together. There's three pieces. There's enterprise, there's the consumer app, and there's the middle, which is the trainer, practitioner, dashboard portal to track everything, to push, hey, here's some
Oh,
programs you
nice.
need to do, Jeff, because, you know, you can talk about correlations. Your squat depth is good, but your forward torso lean is terrible. And I think that's because your dorsiflexion is terrible. So we need to work on your ankles. So, how do we
That's really
connect?
helpful.
Yeah. So how do we connect the practitioner, the trainer using the enterprise version with the end user and their client, or their patient, and it's this middle ground. And so you can track the history, you can assign movement programs and so forth. And then there's on the app side, which it's embarrassing, but I get a notification. I got one yesterday. It's like, hey, you haven't done an assessment in 3 days. So, or you
That's
have a new
good.
program for, yeah. So I think it's really all using all three pieces. As long as we're providing value to the end user, and that's on us, then entirely. And we've gotten 8 years into this. There's we understand for the most part what people like. Um, that's how I'm looking at our model. Plus, it's a much larger number, and there's some others out there. A lot of the movement screens don't have the consumer app. It's more an enterprise version, so we like to have all of it. And the one company that I know does something similar is like $18 a month or $180 for the year. And I'm not interested in competing on price, but it's
Sure.
nice to have something that's established out there that we can work off, and we're extremely profitable without having to jump into that range.
That's really, really smart. Ready to future proof your company and scale to new heights? Dive into the ultimate resource designed just for SaaS founders and C suite executives. Champion Leadership Group gives you an unfair advantage in scaling up revenue and outwitting competitors. Imagine solving your biggest scaling headaches and hitting 5, 10, 20 million ARR and beyond with ease. We take away the guesswork and the grunt work and replace it with framework by supporting you with our on demand fractional C suite team, a powerful operating system built into software, and a thriving community of fellow scaling SaaS founders. That's how we make it happen. If you're stuck at your current revenue level, this is your ticket out. Feel like your company is the world's best kept secret? We amplify your success. And hey, if you're already crushing it but too busy to breathe, we got your back. We'll free up 20% of your time in the first month. Now is the time to upgrade from traction to scale. If you're ready to work smarter and not just grind harder, schedule a 10-minute growth brainstorm. Completely free, not a sales call. You can't buy anything on there. And we will pinpoint the number one thing blocking revenue. Visit championleadership.com. That's where leaders evolve and companies transform. And I love that middle layer because it's really gives the personal trainers, the gym owners, the physical therapists. I mean, it gives them, you know, the ability to help and do their job better. And say, you know, because of what they're seeing in the screens, and then, you know, I think really good to connect those dots for the patient, for the athletes. And so they, you know, who makes that correlation of the lean, and so it's this, and so we got to work on your ankles. And so I think that that's really brilliant to have that piece in there, but it also gives them a way to stand out in the marketplace themselves. If you're a personal trainer or you're a physical therapist and you have this versus, you know, the old way, I think a total game changer just in the perception. You know, if I walk into the office and I see you got this, it just raises my perception of the practice or the trainer already.
Exactly. And some organizations are it's funny, they say they want a digital solution or technical technology related solution. They don't really know what that is. They just know everyone
We just
else
need the
is.
thing.
We need something. I don't even care what it is. It just needs to look
Yeah.
cool to look like we're showing more value. And I think you know, we actually do. Funny story, real quick, is speaking about these three pieces of software. So I mentioned that URSA conference we went to. That's with a lot
Yes.
of the club owners and so forth. So Idea World, which is the one for personal trainers. So we had this URSA one in March, and then we had and people loved it. We had those at thousand screens, and we had some interested buyers, but that was in beta, so we weren't actually ready to monetize it. So 6 months later, we are ready to monetize it, and then we get to Idea, and I'm talking with the VP of sales at TRX, and he's like, so how are then the gyms supposed to track all their members and, you know, where the dashboard? And I mean, and I appreciate you saying some of the things we've done are smart, but on the other side, this was really a poor foresight and really stupid. Is great, they're not able to track anything.
Hmm.
So we better create that. So lesson learned. Actually have the full solution before you try and sell it, software or
Well, I think
otherwise.
that's really helpful though to have that feedback, and you know, you're really testing these ideas in the market, and they're giving you feedback and helping you have ideas that you might not have on your own.
Yeah. Um, you know, I always talk with our team, and all of it. We were also close to it, and we all would like certain features in the app that work for us. So one of our guys is like, "Man, we really need to have these spider graphs here." And I'm like, "I don't even know what a spider graph is." And now that you've shown it to me, I have no idea what it means. So you want that, but I don't think anyone, or maybe I'm dumb, but I don't even understand what it means. So yeah, our opinions are nice and all, but mine doesn't matter, and theirs don't matter. Let's go actually speak to people that are going to use it. So
Yeah,
yeah,
so
took
good.
us several
What
years
other
to learn that
lessons?
one. So
Yeah, yeah. What other lessons have come up as you've been building Physmodo?
um, well, one thing I like about uh, Physmodo is what I do. I mean, it's you know, it's personal in some ways, in that you know, it's a product I can use and I like to use, and is helpful for me. It doesn't stop me doing dumb things like trying to play golf on my torn meniscus and making it way worse.
Hmm.
But that has nothing to do with our product. My point being, I like what I do. I have a passion for it. Versus a company I had in my 30s that worked on, you know, health insurance billing and software, which I had no passion for. Uh, Saw business opportunity, was just probably wasn't going to work. I realized after a year, and then 8 years later, I'm like, yeah, really, this isn't going to work. And
Wow,
it's
that's
partly
tough.
because I made, yeah. So it's partly because I made some bad decisions, but I think a lot of it was, I just don't like this. I don't care at all. So I don't think that really answered your question. I guess the lesson learned was do something you actually care about. But in terms of lessons with Physmodo, what's always um, evolving is the camera, in the iPad or the phone, because again, we were using this separate Connect and then the Orbeck Astra Mini depth camera, which limited us to our original product, and not being able to have the reach to any consumer. And so we had to learn how to adjust to new markets, and it opened up new opportunities in several of these markets we've talked about. And then you're just having to learn um, how to use these cameras. So for instance, on there's two cameras, the front and the back camera on your iPhone. The back camera, is LiDAR. It's 3D. It's true 3D. The problem with
Wow.
that is, yeah. So this was like, okay, what's our lesson here? We can have um, a screen based off this LiDAR, but think about that. You're not self-assessing, because if you have that camera pointing at you, you can't see the screen. So, okay, let's
Right.
try and use the front camera. Well, the front camera is 2D. It's a color camera. So great for facial recognition. But we're trying to look at all of your joints, and we're trying to get, a lot of, we need to be extremely accurate. So it's like, how do we make that work? Because it's fundamental to what we do is being able to self-assess. So it's, we're able to very fortunate, able to take that front camera and do inverse kinematics, which, don't ask me what that means, but it's, an algorithm, and we have smart people to figure it out, to be able to get the equivalent of 3D to
Wow.
to get the same type of accuracy that we were getting with the true 3D camera. So yeah, lessons learned is, I mean, we just got to learn how to use the technology as it evolves, and it evolves super quickly, and learn how to adjust to the markets, and really trying to. This seems super fundamental, but like, um, what does our product do? I mean, I know what it does. It measures how you move, but um, what does it do? Do for you, I should say, because in the military or in college sports, do you really need to engage your servicemen, your soldiers, or whatever? No, they're there. They better do what you say.
Right.
And so you have college athlete, yeah, they're kids, but I mean, you pretty much have to do what you say. But so that's true. Like, all right, I want to try and prevent injuries. Then you have it on, um, these companies we talked about that really need to have some technology to it. Well, at that point, we're a retention tool, right?
Yes.
Or an acquisition or retention tool. And then on personal training, we're trying to make their job easier. So now we're a sales tool. So it's prevention, performance, sales, engagement, and trying to learn, um, what are your markets need, and we're constantly learning that. And so yeah, we're always learning. You screw up enough, you learn more.
That is definitely true. I think it's really smart that you're looking at different markets that way and really figuring out what is it that we deliver, what's the value proposition for that specific market, because it is different. And I think one of the mistakes that a lot of founders make is they look at different markets and they try and use the same messaging or the same positioning in all of the markets, and they're like, I don't understand why it doesn't resonate, because it works over here but it doesn't work over there. And it's because the outcomes are different, what they're looking for is different, how they're using it is different.
Yeah, I mean, if you take the message and the value prop to a gym, for instance, and say, um, "Hey, Jeff, you have, a big thing for you is retention. It's pretty tough. Well, you're going to get retention because less of your members are going to get injured because they're using our tool. No one cares. Not as powerful as saying,
Yep.
"Hey, Jeff, we're going to be able to increase your percentage of people doing personal training from 10% to 11%. That's massive.
It is.
Okay,
Now you've got their
so
attention.
yeah, and I don't have to go to the military and have them use our software to sell anything. They're just truly trying for prevention. So
Right.
yeah, it's Yeah, I've had a sales deck in the past taking those numbers I mentioned with the 54% musculoskeletal and versus much lower for circulatory respiratory, and having that as our first slide. And it's like, okay, it's really nice, but I don't care. What's my ROI
Right.
here? Great, nice chart. No one cares. You can take that to an employer, they care, because their number
Yes.
two cost behind labor is health insurance.
Yep. That's
And
right.
just like our plan, I'm like, okay, just went up 10%. It always goes up 10%.
That
Doubles
seems like
every
it
seven
happens every year.
years.
Yeah.
That's not a good thing. But if I
Yep.
can get less claims, that matters. And the greatest number of my claims are not ours, because we're all diligent with our screen and prevent injuries. But I mean, across the board, it's
Right.
musculoskeletal. Why aren't we doing anything to try and solve it? So that's a prevention. Mm, they're
Yeah,
not
that's
trying to
really
sell
good.
anything to their employees necessarily. So it's been fun trying to figure out, what our message is, and it's different to each market.
Yes. Yes. That's really smart. Well, tell me a little bit more about lessons learned in the previous company. You mentioned, being passionate about the business. I think that is so important. The startups are hard.
Yeah, and I heard this piece of advice. It was probably after the fact, or I probably would have acted upon it. But I'd come from um, a place where life had been pretty easy, and after grad school, I did the JD MBA thing, and I am a licensed attorney, and I keep that up. But I knew 30 minutes into my first class that I can't do this shit. This is awful. I don't know, people do this for a living. But with the MBA with it, I went into investment banking, and getting into law school was pretty easy. Passing the bar, not a problem. Investment banking, you make a lot of money, and I come in to start this company like a young, naive, and arrogant, and um, like I'm not going to fail. So I mean, if I checked my ego a little bit at the door there, that would have been good. And ultimately, this was a great lesson to just get crushed. It's been helpful here. But I mean, you got to understand your business, and you're going to learn a lot in the first year or two, and you're either going to be able to fix that problem, or you're not going to be able to fix that problem. And if I wasn't sure we could fix the problem, and we were, the business that worked in higher education and offering a new type of service in higher education. So, all right, don't go into a business that is entirely reliant on selling to public colleges and universities, because your sales cycle is long, and they won't necessarily mm, want a whole lot of change. Now, kind of hypocritical, because I said we are in college sports. That's a little different than
Sure.
some of this, admin stuff. So I just think, you got to understand your market. You're going after something with such a long sales cycle, and something is new, and then yeah, give it a go. That makes sense. But then after a couple years or 3 years, and you're not having any competitors, like, you may think that's good, but there's a reason we had no competitors, because I don't think
Right.
there was a great market for it, you know? So that, no competitors, that's a red flag.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
also, uh, it's a finite market. I'm not saying somebody has to go after all kinds of markets, which we're not necessarily doing. They're kind of coming to us because we have something that really applies to all the different markets. But the number of colleges is very finite. Our solution didn't
Sure.
go anywhere else. So there's all these headwinds, and I just, again, everything had been so easy, and I just had this feeling of infallibility. Um, so I mean, if I was just honest with myself, I'm like, I don't think this is going to work. And I've worked my ass off, and I've tried, and I've gone every approach to try and solve what I uh, perceive as our problems, but I just didn't quit. And some might see that as, okay, it's great, good resilience. Well, no, it's stupid because, you know, I'm not saying I wasted 6 more years before I failed, and I'd rather would have, fail early is the advice that I think I got after. If you're going to fail, move on. It's okay.
It's hard to do though, especially when it's your baby and you want to stick it out. But you have to think about the reason why. And just like you said, you weren't in love with solving the problem. You didn't love the business,
Yeah,
which is different.
yeah. I mean, that's that's a huge deal. And then I think just getting on a real like psychological personal basis is, yeah, it was my baby, but I was kind of identifying who I was based on the
Mm,
success or failure of the business. And I think a lesson learned is like, man, if your business fails, it doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means you weren't, great at running that business. And so that was a lesson learned really after it failed, and just dealing with some personal, I was still depressed. I mean, like, God, this business failed. It's my fault. And it was my fault. I ran the company. But it doesn't, it doesn't define me. And I've learned that. So
really important lesson is really
yeah,
having that identity outside, separating the business from your identity and having that outside. So important.
definitely. Definitely. So that was 9 years of a lot of lessons, both business wise and, just on a personal level. But when I look back at who I was as an investment banker, just making a ton of money and not really adding any value to life, because if I was fired or went away, no one would care, and and be replaced the next day. Whereas right now, I mean, if I left, it'd be a problem. Um, so the thing about making a bunch of money when you're in your 20s, or at least for me, is is that it, like, you're on top of the world. What can go wrong? And I do spreadsheets, and I'm doing spreadsheets for this company, and yeah, the revenue goes up 12%, and they're this and that, and yeah, then you're doing it yourself, and it's like, oh man, these forecasts don't actually work out the way it's supposed to sometimes. So anyway, I can't
I,
remember your question, but hopefully that addressed whatever it was.
yes, yes. I can definitely relate to that. Just feeling invincible. Like you have a
Yes.
little bit of success, and you're like, I can't fail, and then you do, and you're like,
Hmm.
how did that happen? That wasn't supposed to be the outcome.
I know.
That wasn't the
I
way I
know.
drew it up in the spreadsheet.
Yeah, I think not necessarily a lesson, but I think there's two things you need, at least at a minimum, to be successful. Is you need to execute well, and you need to get a couple breaks, um,
Yeah,
here and there. And we've been we've been really fortunate in executing a little better here, and just getting breaks. I mean, like, I have an example. So COVID was bad for us because we're in a business that sold to gyms that either had none were operating, and then some filed bankruptcy, which their
right.
budgets weren't great when that happens. Um, and all of a sudden, well, we got some government assistance. And it wasn't, the PPPs, and that wasn't a huge number. And then we got an SBA 7A loan, which was helpful, but still, this dragged on and dragged on. I'm like, I don't think we're going to make it. And all of a sudden, I get this email one day that says, you're eligible for an extension of the SBA loan. And I'm like, this is coming via email. This has got to be some sort of fraud. But it had an SBA.gov. And I'm like, well, what the hell do I have to lose? So we did that, and we got a bunch more money all of a sudden. And that's a break. That's a break
Yeah,
that, I'm not saying we didn't deserve anything. It just happened. We got a break there. Um, so here we are, 4 years later, doing pretty well, thanks to that break we got.
that's really smart. And the execution. Yeah, definitely. So there are definitely breaks, but certainly execution matters a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I can tell you're really passionate about this business where you said you weren't about the other one. I mean, this is something that you're excited about. And I knew that from the first time we talked.
Yeah. Well, it's easier to execute if you care more.
Yes.
You put more into it, and it is
Yes.
also easier to execute when you've screwed up and learned some lessons.
Yeah. Well, where can people learn more about you and about Physmodo online?
Yeah. So we've done B2B, and now and we didn't do much social media. Um, and now we really need to because we are hitting B2C, but we're a little
Yeah.
behind on that. So yeah, to reach me, please just go on LinkedIn, or we're at physmodo.com to learn a little bit about us. PHYSMODO. Although I guess people will get that when they um, listen to that or see any info. But
Yeah. We'll link it in the
yeah,
show notes for sure.
please reach out on LinkedIn. I'd love to learn about other businesses, potential partnerships. Yeah, just being able to meet good people, smart people, partnerships, so forth. But yeah, and
That's
then one
great.
day we'll actually. I was just going
And
to
the
say
app is
I'll get
available in,
it's available in the App Store, and then Google Play or whatever the Android people call it.
yeah,
But
I'm one of those.
well,
And
our
it is in the Play
developers
Store.
Play Store. Okay, good. Yeah, I
Yes.
should know these things. Our developers all have Android. Apparently, it's a much better device.
Yeah, just don't tell that to the Apple people.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. I mean, so we haven't concentrated as Android's about 6 weeks behind on this new redesign that we've just released, um, and that's fine in the U.S. But we're starting this partnership in Australia, and they're like, "Hey, dude, how's your Android?" I'm like, yeah, we'll be there. And he said, 40% of our people use Android. And then the rest of the world, I mean, what is Android? Three-quarters of globally of
Something
people
like
that
that.
use it. Yeah.
Yeah,
So, well, with TRX, we were in 28 countries. That was all B2B. You know, it didn't matter, but there's people, outside the US like what we do. So we need to be able to that's what I've learned. If people want it, you actually have to have a product that's ready. So
that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Everybody
yeah,
should definitely go take a look at the app, download it, and check that out. And like you said, physmodo.com. And we'll make sure and link your LinkedIn profile as well. Put that in the show notes.
please do. Thanks, Jeff. I
Yes,
appreciate that.
absolutely.
And then we'll eventually get on Instagram. I think we do actually have an Instagram account. I think our last post was, you know, a long time ago. It's embarrassing. I'll be on that. I'll get on that, or someone will. I
Sounds
don't
good.
I don't know anything about that.
Well, Andrew, it's a great conversation. I love what you're building. And thank you for being on SaaS Fuel.
Yeah, thanks for having me. This has been a lot of fun. Appreciate it, Jeff.
Thanks again, Andrew, for coming on the show and sharing your journey and insights. Such cool stuff. It's a great way to apply tech and doing a lot of good in the world as well. You can learn more about Andrew and Physmodo at physmodo.com. As always, all links, highlights, resources, and full show notes are available at sassfuel.com. And be sure to check us out on YouTube as well. It's at Champion Leadership on YouTube. We've got full video episodes, training, outtakes, shorts, lots of stuff out there for you on YouTube. Thought leaders share. Share this episode with someone who's used their smartwatch to time how long it takes their cat to knock over a cup of coffee. Well, everyone who shares this week gets a CouchFit 5000. It's all the rage. It's a wearable fitness tracker, kind of like this, that counts keyboard strokes and remote control clicks as cardio and gives you a gold star for Netflix marathons because resolution is really about display quality, right? New Year's resolution is like, I'm only streaming in 4K or higher this year. What if your business could get expert marketing leadership without the heavy price tag of a full time CMO? Thursday on our SaaS Fuel Expert Series, Casey Stanton, founder of CMOX. Casey has worked with hundreds of businesses to help them find their perfect CMO match without the hefty price tag. He'll show us how to unlock smarter growth, leaner teams, and better results in our marketing. And then what if the secret to skyrocketing your sales pipeline lies in mastering cold email? Next Tuesday, founder Nikita Bikdarov, founder of Meldoso, joins us to reveal how he is scaling his SaaS by helping sales teams navigate the challenges of email marketing while keeping their messages out of spam folders and in front of decision makers. I will see you next time, and as always, enjoy the journey.
Thanks for listening to SaaS Fuel. Full show notes for each episode, which includes a summary, key takeaways, quotes, and any resources mentioned, are available at saasfuel.com. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're enjoying the content and getting value from these episodes, please leave us a rating and review at ratethispodcast.com/saasfuel. We'll be sure to read these out on future episodes.